We're now going to have a look at a more advanced method of bringing bitmaps into Flash. Since Adobe acquired Macromedia last year, now we have the integration between Photoshop and Flash, and this is fantastic because we can now bring in layered Photoshop documents. In the past, we had to export them as individual layers. Each layer had to be exported as an individual document and then placed together in Flash, and this was very tedious and time-consuming, very unflexible, and also resulted in some pretty large file sizes. Now we can just import an entire layered document in a Flash very easily. So without further ado, let's do it. We're going to go under File, and we're going to choose Import, and we'll import it to Stage. Now what we want to do is we've got a PSD here. It's called Game Boy, and you'll find this on your Session 1 folders, and click Open. And now here we have is our Photoshop importer. You notice it looks very similar to the Illustrator importer, but now we're importing a layered Photoshop document. And a good strategy to use when you're working in Photoshop is if you want to have a bunch of layers here and you want to group them together and not have too many layers inside of Flash, rather than flattening them in Photoshop, make a layer set out of them. Just put them there inside this group and then just click on Create Movie Clip for this layer. And now what it will do, you'll see this little movie clip symbol. Everything inside this set now will be merged together into one movie clip. Let's go into the buttons here. We've got these different buttons. We're going to keep those as individual layers. And notice when we click on one, we can flatten it, or we can have it a bitmap image with an editable layer style. Now the editable layer style, not edible, you definitely don't want to eat them, doesn't necessarily give you the Flash equivalent. For instance, if you have a drop shadow in Photoshop, it doesn't convert it to a Flash drop shadow. What it does is it just rasterizes a copy of it, and it'll be on another layer as a PNG. So if you want to create the layer style, what you would have to do is you could choose to have it an editable layer style, then it'll bring it in as a separate layer. You could delete it and then add the Flash layer style, or you could just bring it in as flattened. Be wary though of bringing in too many of these flattened images because they can start to look really weird where they overlap. So let's bring all of these in with the same settings. So we'll choose the first button, and now we can hold the Shift key. Select multiple of these, and now we can decide to bring them all in as movie clips just by clicking. Now the whole set there, you'll see they're all movie clip symbols now. And we can also change the compression. We can change them to lossless compression, which would be like a ping, or lossy, and we can use the published settings, which are the global settings, or we can choose a custom setting. And we can click the calculate bitmap size. This will tell us how big they'll be. 5K, not a big deal. So you see we can adjust all those in one hit. Let's go to the screen here. Let's look at some other options here. Notice that these are showing these little symbols here, telling us that these are all bitmap images. Let's grab these two text layers. I want to make them editable text, so we just click this option now. Now you'll see the little T, and that tells us that we can actually adjust this text inside of Flash. It'll bring it in as real text, and you can tell the text layers there. Click that one. Even though it's hidden, we want to bring it in, so we'll turn it on, so it will be imported. Anything unchecked won't be imported. We don't need the background because Flash already has one. So as you can see, we can go in here. We've got quite a lot of different options there. So let's bring these in as we have them there. Now what we can choose to do here is each one of these we can bring them in as a movie clip. That layer there we can make a movie clip. And if we want to give an instance name, we'll give it an instance name, and then that way we can control it with ActionScript. We can change the registration point so it'll be in the center or on the corners or wherever you like. The registration point basically is where Flash sees it as the point for aligning, positioning, or any transformations. Alright, let's have a look at the different options we have here now. We can bring them in as flash layers or keyframes. Flash layers is typically the option you're going to choose unless you're doing some kind of a image sequence. And then finally, set stage to the same size as the Photoshop canvas. This is a fantastic option. This will resize the Flash stage to match what we have in Photoshop. So let's click OK. And now we've just imported it there. And you can see we've got the different layers. Let's slide this down, we can see all the layers here. And notice that the layer sets are kept, like here's buttons and screen. So on the screen there, notice we've got these text layers. We can hide these different text layers. Actually, let's turn the screen on. There's one text layer. There's another type layer. So let's actually click that one. In fact, let's lock everything except for that. And we'll double click on it here and look at this. We can select it and we can actually adjust the type here. So you can see that it gives us an incredible amount of flexibility. And now we can play around with this and we can convert this into an application. And let's look at a final one that I've done a little bit of work to. Here is basically the same thing, and I've just added a couple of buttons on here and a couple of behaviors. And let's test this and see how it looks. We're just going to use the control return, and that would be command enter on Mac, and we're publishing it. And here we go, we're publishing it right now. We're viewing this as a SWF. Now, as I go over here, I can click on these different things and display the different text. I can hide it by clicking there. I can even show photos in here. This is just using a little bit of ActionScript, and later on we'll be using some of these different types of ActionScript in this course. But this shows you what can really be done very quickly by importing a PSD, and by the way, this whole thing was illustrated by me in Photoshop, and that way it was easy to have everything on separate layers because it was an illustration, and then very quickly it can be turned into this great little viewer, which could actually be used as a web page. So I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about how you can bring in these PSDs, and you can see how quickly we can turn this into a fully functional application.